So as we just discussed, Joe Biden gave a big speech talking about the threat to our democracy, and the right wing has exploded. Now, anytime Joe Biden does anything, they're going to be unhappy, but the level of triggeredness that they get sometimes varies. And this, I would say, is 10 out of 10. They are breaking down. And I think part of it is because, number one, it was very shameless on the part of Joe Biden, which isn't a Democratic thing. A lot of Democratic politicians are so bad at branding themselves effectively, are so bad at being aggressive, are so bad at being as kind of full court press, the phrase that Ruminate used a bunch yesterday, which is a great way to put it, as the Republican Party is. The Republican Party does anything to try to, get out their message and effectively get their political wins. And then the Democratic Party cares a bunch about civility. Now, I respect to a certain extent having more of a level of respect for our institutions, for our processes and all that type of stuff. But at some point, you got to start fighting as well. You can't just keep taking it in the face. And so Joe Biden recently really seems to be doing that. Much more unapologetic and aggressive. And I think that's part of why the right wing is so triggered. So starting off, we're just going to go through a few examples for you. Here's Charlie Kirk. And I'll let him explain why this is the most absurd thing Biden's ever done.
Looked like something out of the 1930s. And I don't say this lightly. And I can't stand when everyone compares everything to Nazi Germany. I think that is overdone.
But get ready, because he's going to.
I think that it is just kind of a lazy and sloppy throwaway line. In fact, we have a rule here on the Charlie Kirk Show, which is not to compare everything to Hitler. But I'll be very honest. It was very Hitlerian. There is no other explanation than this. The red lights coming up, and so then Joe Biden comes center stage.
So, the obsession with the color of the lights behind Joe Biden is very fascinating to me. And the obsession with the aesthetic stuff is crazy. Yeah, he's the president. He's doing a big speech. They're trying to make it all, fancy and whatever. Okay, can we move past that? And will you make some substantive point about the things that he said? No, you won't. It's Hitlerian because of the red lights behind him. That makes sense. All right. And then jumping over to Fox News, a similar remark about kind of Biden. One of the things they kept saying was both it's Hitlerian was a phrase I heard multiple times, and then also that he's declaring war on half of the country.
Sick all the way around, and to the point of the Marine standing behind him, this eerie red backdrop.
And to be clear, even though this doesn't matter, the backdrop was lighting the building, where directly behind him there was red, and then a little bit wider out there was blue. So if you do a wide shot, you would see red and blue. That's America, baby. But then the closer up shots would just be red. And then the obsession with that still doesn't make sense. But
he looked like the villain. But this is what's happening here. I mean, you have Joe Biden classifying 74 million Americans as extremists, as fascists. When you have extremists, fascists, terrorists that are half of America, you have to use every resource available to take them out, whether it's the government, big tech, media, intelligence, law enforcement. They need to be rooted out of this society. And so Joe Biden is, I think, setting the stage for a war against half of America, because if you want to...
So stoking fear among their followers. Listen, all Biden did was lay out, here's the ideology that the MAGA Republican movement stands for and what they advocate on behalf of. And that is fascistic when you're putting your, ambition for power above our democracy. That's just what it is. And he's not saying they need to be dealt with in a violent way. He's saying that the ideology is dangerous and that's why we need to politically win. And the solution he posed was voting. So pretending like he's declaring war on MAGA is silly. And then finally, Steve Bannon, oh my gosh, comparing Biden to a pagan god of child sacrifice.
We've talked about the defilement on the raid and ransacking of Mar-a-Lago, where they weaponized the FBI. But the paper record, New York Times. Look at the Moloch right there. That's next level. Here's why. It's a desecration. It's a desecration of
what?
Independence Hall.
He says it's a desecration of Independence Hall. by lighting it red and blue?
Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Liberty Bell, goes to Philadelphia, a city that's in chaos and collapsing all around you. It's crime and anarchy takes over. And he goes there. That's Moloch. Look at that. They did that on purpose.
So Moloch, he keeps referring to, is that pagan god of child sacrifice.
The stagecraft for these presidential events, whether it's Obama or Trump or Bush or Biden, and Donnie George says this is the most important speech of his career. He'll always be known with that photo of him like Moloch, right? This is next level.
He's always going to be known as the photo of him like Moloch. Well, first of all, I don't know about you guys. Maybe I'm going to come off as uneducated or something. I have no clue who Moloch is until I read about it just now to figure out who he was talking about. So him trying to make that, this is Biden's legacy, the photo of him looking like Moloch. And then, of course, playing into the QAnon stuff, child sacrifice. And again, so much of the conversation, so much, my brain was melting listening to these people, was centered around the aesthetic, was centered around the style of this speech. And not even the speech's style, just the surrounding visual kind of elements. And the funny part is when you think about Joe Biden, I'm sure he signed off. I'm sure they kind of pitched it to him. He said, cool, that sounds good. Maybe not, though. The president isn't sitting there doing design for his speech that he's going to do. You know what I mean? So spending your entire show criticizing the way that the speech looked when it was just a bunch of staff members who sorted that out probably is wild, when what he was talking about was very significant. So the two critiques I've heard from the right wing, it's only aesthetic, or you're declaring war on the right wing, you're declaring war on MAGA Republicans. No, he's correctly identifying a very real characteristic of that movement. That's what's happening. And if you want to try to explain to us why the descriptions of the MAGA movement he made were incorrect, then do so. But just pretending like this is some call to violence against MAGA Republicans is so dishonest. And the reason why they're doing that, as I'm sure you guys know, is because they don't have an argument against it. They don't know how to break down the individual points about the danger of the anti-democratic actions of Trump and the MAGA movement behind him.